Most people assume that they need better skills, more strategies, something outside of themselves to finally get to the next step that they've been craving. But the thing that most people don't understand is that there's one core underlying driver underneath all of these behaviors, but no one is looking at it. And so in today's episode, we are going to be unpacking exactly what the biggest performance driver actually is and how you can begin to work with it intentionally so that you can finally start to make progress and see the results that you've been craving. This is The Self-Led Leader. I'm Dr. Christina, and in this show, we explore how your beliefs about who you are and what you're capable of determine the results that you're getting. Every week, we go beyond your skills and strategy to explore the psychology of how you operate and how it's been limiting you so you can finally achieve the goals you didn't think you could. Let's get into today's episode. Whether it's someone running their own business or someone working in corporate, I keep seeing the same underlying thought come through, that their communication skills need to be improved in order to show up and speak with confidence, whether that's with their team or with their clients, that they're not consistent or productive enough. They're not doing enough to be able to handle their workload, to keep up with creating content and client work and all of these incredibly difficult moving pieces that come across all of our lines of work. And so the mistake that I see so many smart, capable, expert people making in this space is that they look at themselves and their life and they categorize all of their different behaviors, their productivity, their consistency, their motivation, their communication skills, their on-camera confidence, their ability to network. They take all of these separate behaviors and box them into different categories. And they look at it and they get overwhelmed and they say, oh my goodness, I have so many things to improve on because this box and this box and this box are all of my flaws and things that I'm lacking. And then they go out and buy a course for charisma, buy a book about presence, listen to a podcast about optimizing team performance, and nothing seems to work or fit the box that they need to the level that they need it to, or to the degree that they wish they could see the change that they're craving. And this is something that happens at such a common rate that it's just something that most of us have accepted as how it is and who we are and just the way that we all function. So for myself, I've gone through this for years without recognizing the core mechanism underneath. When I first started my business, I had so many moving pieces that I was learning all at the same time, and I was not necessarily brand new to business. I had had quite a few little attempts at entrepreneurship, from selling essential oils and Himalayan salt lamps on Amazon to starting an Etsy shop and selling a variety of print-on-demand products or digital products, and going into, academic planners and products to personalized merchandise. I had dabbled for quite a bit, but when I started my current business, it was so difficult for me because I would look at all of the tasks, and at first it was very much separate things. How do I improve my marketing if I don't feel comfortable selling? How do I show up online if I don't feel comfortable in front of a camera? How do I lead a client session with kindness and empathy and warmth while still holding a professional boundary and letting my expertise and my knowledge shine through? All of these seemed like so many different puzzle pieces that I just couldn't get them to fit. And I would spend so much time focusing on one that I would feel guilty by not focusing on the others. And then I'd see minor improvements in one, but not necessarily improvements in the other. And this can be such an incredibly frustrating experience. And it wasn't until I really sat down and considered what I had learned while getting my doctorate in psychology, all of the concepts and the principles and the theory and the knowledge that I knew, but I wasn't implementing in myself. Because it's one thing to know something, and it's another thing entirely to actually do it. And so I had to have a real come to Jesus moment with myself and be very honest about the fact that the only thing holding me back was myself. And just like so many of the sessions that I have with clients, the core denominator in your life is always you. And so it becomes easy to get distracted and to look for reasons and excuses. Often we feel good. We feel good being able to point to something outside of ourselves to say that is the thing that is messing all of this up. That is the thing that is slowing me down. That thing over there, if only it didn't exist, all my problems would go away. But in reality, most of us know that this just isn't true. That just isn't the case. But it feels good and it feels productive and it feels like it lets us off the hook. So we use it and we say it and we justify it to ourselves until the moment comes where there's a change or that thing isn't there. And then the challenge you were facing continues to be a challenge for you. And so what most people don't realize is that as you are the common denominator in your life, so is the way that you think about yourself. When we look at these separate categories, these separate boxes of our communication skills, our productivity, our ability to be consistent, our ability to show up with confidence, to let our authority shine through without feeling imposter syndrome, to take on new risks and new challenges and trust our own decision making. These are not separate components. These are all parts of who we are. And who we are fundamentally comes down to our definition of self, our definition of who we are and what we are capable of doing. And so instead of looking for an external driver of your performance, it is time to start looking internally into who you think you are and what you think you are capable of doing. Because that definition of self is the driver, is the greatest performance driver in your life. And it is the thing that is either propelling you forward or keeping you holding yourself back across multiple areas and categories. So for myself, when I think about when I started my business, my imposter syndrome was running rampant. While I was still in graduate school getting my doctorate degree, I had already developed imposter syndrome. I had spent years knowing that I am smart and capable and resilient and hardworking and putting in the reps and reading the research and running the studies and writing the papers. That was challenging and it was hard, but it wasn't new to me. It fell within the realm of what I was capable of doing. So it was natural. It was the byproduct of who I am and what I can do. But when it came time to step outside of my definition of self, to go beyond my own limits and my own limiting definitions of I'm an introvert, I'm not very social, I don't enjoy interacting on a large scale, I'm shy, I don't like initiating conversations. All these definitions that I had of myself completely limited my behavior and restricted what I thought was even possible for me to accomplish. And that propelled my imposter syndrome because I would show up, minimally socialize with my peers and colleagues, and then have all these ideas running wild about how I'm possibly the only one feeling this way, even though that's not the case. And the same exact thing is happening for you. Your definition of self, your definition of who you are, the qualities that you attribute to yourself, the things that you think you're capable of doing are determining what you are willing to try and how long you're willing to try it for. Because if fundamentally you don't consider yourself to be resilient, as an example, as soon as you're facing hardship, you are more likely to quit or to quit sooner than someone else. Because by definition, if you don't think you're resilient, then you don't think putting in the reps is worth it. Or in other words, when putting in the reps becomes challenging and you don't consider yourself to be resilient, quitting doesn't just feel like an excuse or a cop-out. Quitting feels like it's acceptable, like it's normal, like it's something that you've done before and it's something that you can do again because it's just who you are. And this is the thing that people don't realize nearly often enough. And this is exactly what we do in so many of my coaching sessions. We get to the root and the core of how you define yourself, how you have placed limits on yourself and what you are and what is acceptable for you to try, what you're capable of, and what is outside the realm of what is for you. And when you understand yourself at that level, when you see it for the root, for the core of your behavior as it actually is, then all of a sudden, everything else about your life and your current performance begins to make sense too. Maybe it's not just you struggling with consistency in your business. Maybe it's the underlying fear in showing up online for your business and showing up with confidence, with grace, with authority in an online setting is intimidating because in the past you were taught that that goes against your family values. I know that was the case for me. I was taught to be a very private individual. My older brother had literally sat me down and would rehearse with me ways for me to shut people down and not answer questions and make it very clear that it was not their business to know things. And so showing up online and sharing my thoughts, sharing my opinions, it wasn't just a matter of I can't be consistent. It was a matter of understanding that this fundamentally clashes with a core value that I have. But until you sit down to actually look at this, to look at the root of your self that leads to all your behaviors, you just won't understand what's happening. And so most people are treating this completely backwards. They're looking at the performance and they're trying to reverse engineer which behaviors will get them there. But that won't work if the behavior that you are attempting to do completely clashes with your definition of self and how you have already defined who you are and what you are capable of or what you are allowed to do. Let's sit with that for a moment. And so one really simple technique that actually ends up being so challenging is to sit down and to ask yourself, how do I define myself? Take a piece of paper, write down who I am, and try to list at least 10 adjectives. And that might not sound like a lot, but when I have done this exercise in client sessions, many people struggle to get past 4 or 5. Not only are we not used to talking about ourselves this way or describing ourselves this way, but most of us have never truly articulated who we are externally to other people. We just assume that how we come across, how we talk, what we talk about, we assume it gives them an accurate indication of us and who we are. So try this out. Take that piece of paper. Try to get past 10 or 20 adjectives. How do you describe yourself? You might be surprised or shocked or even disappointed with what comes up if you're being honest with yourself. And that's okay, because the traits that you're using that are disappointing, those are a very clear indication that that's the area you are most willing to change in first. When you've done that exercise, sit down and then write a list of at least 20 things that you think you are allowed to do. Now, the interesting thing with this one is that when you sit and truly think about what you have either given yourself permission to do or assume is permissible based on the expectations of others, maybe that's your family, your partner, your friends, just what you think socially or culturally is acceptable for you. That is all incredibly useful information, because when you understand what you think is permissible for you, then you can start to read between the lines and truly identify what that then means is not acceptable for you to do. And it's always interesting to notice how many of the goals and the behaviors that we have for ourselves that we find incredibly hard to do, to pursue, or to be consistent with fall on the list of things that are outside the scope of what's acceptable for us. It's mind-blowing how much it's all interconnected. And that is exactly how our psychology works. It's not just about understanding what helps you be productive, although that's important too. I mean, I wholeheartedly believe in the importance of understanding your personal prerequisites and what sets you up for success, but that is not the core of it. When you can get very, very clear on understanding who you are and what you're capable of, the definition of self that you have created, that is when you unlock a whole new level of growth and performance edge that you didn't think was possible for you. So go ahead, try the exercise out. Reach out to me if you'd like to. Let me know how it went, what you found, the types of breakthroughs you had. I always love hearing about it because sometimes it truly, truly is the simple things that give us the biggest breakthroughs. And nothing is more fundamental and more important to understand than your definition of self, because it is the foundation for everything else in your life. I hope you have found this episode helpful, and I will talk to you in the next one. Take care.